Good morning. This is Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We broadcast here from Kingston, but starting from now, we broadcast as well in New York through Irish Jam. And in a short while, I'm going to be talking with Beauregard, who rules the roost up there. But it's the start of another week and start of another program. But before I even get into today's program, I've been watching some of the news channels, BBC, Sky News, and they're reporting on the continuing protests taking place in France, mainly in Paris, but in some other parts of the country, where thousands of persons, thousands of primarily workers, are out on the street demonstrating. And they're not just demonstrating, they're burning cars and they're breaking shop windows, and they're going on with a whole heap of something. I never know that people in France behave that kind of way. And what are they upset about? They're upset because the government wants to increase the retirement age. The retirement age is now 62. And the government wants to move it to 64. And not move it right away, It wouldn't reach 64 until 2030. But the French people are very upset about that. And bear in mind, that France has the lowest retirement age in the whole of Europe. France retirement age is 62. If you look at the United Kingdom, Germany, Spain, their retirement age is 66. And if you happen to be working in Italy or in the Netherlands, their retirement age is 67. And the French government, I don't hold no brief for them, but the French government says, look, this 62-year retirement is burdensome because when you retire at 62, they have to pay you your pension. And then they have to pay somebody else to take over your job. So they're paying two money. And what they are saying is that, look, let's move the retirement age to 64 so that you give us 2 more years of work before you qualify for retirement. It will ease the burden on the budget, and it will even make it possible for us to pay better pensions since people wouldn't be qualifying for pensions until 2 years after the normal period. But the French people say, no way. Forget it, we're not in that. I don't understand. People living longer these days. People are living, the life expectancy in France used to be in the 70s. Now it is, what? In France, let me look it up. Life expectancy in France is now 83. So what the government is saying, work until you are 62, then you retire and get your pension. And if all things go well, you will have another 21 years to enjoy your retirement. Because you're living longer, medical science has improved, healthcare has improved. People are more conscious now about healthy lifestyles. We're more conscious about protecting the environment because the state of the environment can affect the quality of our health. But the French people burning down the place because they said they're not into that. As a matter of fact, I think they're planning to move a vote of no confidence in the French president today. It's an issue that is not strange to us. We are going to have to seriously consider it. The government has just recently undertaken a major overhaul of our public sector compensation arrangements. I think we used to have over 100 different pay scales. And what they have done is to realign that and reduce that. Now I think we have something like under 20, I believe, or somewhere in that region. Different pay scales that would apply right across the government service. So whether you are a policeman or a teacher, there's a pay scale that is standard throughout throughout the government service. But the next big ticket item that we are going to have to confront here is pension reform, because people are living longer. Pensions have to be increased because inflation eat out what the money can buy, and it is becoming a big burden on the budget. And in reforming our pension arrangements, several things need to be done. I think we need to find a way to set up real professional pension funds. Right now, if you work for government, when you get to retirement age and you retire, there's no fund, special fund there to pay your pension. That has to come straight out of the budget. So every year the government has to vote a certain amount of money in the budget to pay what pensions they anticipate that they will have to pay out for that year. One of the things that we have to consider is that pension arrangements, maybe it should be a contributory scheme where the government puts in a portion, the public sector worker puts in a portion, that money is invested wisely, prudently, not recklessly. You don't want what happened to Usain Bolt to happen to people pension money, but wisely invested so that it can earn a good return, and so that when people reach retirement age and they get a pension, they can get a livable pension. A pension that by that time their expenses may have gone down because they don't have children that they have to maintain no more. But then the expenses may also go up because they have to be buying medicines that they never used to need before. So, you want to be able to give them a reasonable pension in their retirement years where they can live comfortably, eat a proper diet and buy your medicines and pay your utility bills and take a little vacation, go to the North Coast or take a trip abroad every now and again. I mean, that's what you want to be able to do. So we are going to have to confront that. And I'm sure that there's going to be resistance to it as well. If in reforming our pension arrangements, the suggestion is made that perhaps we need to increase the age of retirement. But that is not what the program is about today. The program is about something significantly different, even though there may be some relation to what I just said. But we're watching what is happening in France. I'll tell you about what we're going to be discussing today as soon as I come back. When I hold on, Beauregard is up yet? Not yet. Okay, we'll link with him shortly. When I went to university here in Jamaica, and that's a long time ago, more than 50 years ago, at that time only a small percentage of high school graduates had the privilege of going to university, and I was even more privileged to have been one of them. At that time, we only had one university in Jamaica, UWI. And the total enrollment of first degree, what they call undergraduate students, was about 1,200. At that time, each year, about 400 persons would graduate with their first degrees. Some of them would head off to work, some of them would stay in the university and do further studies, do their masters and their PhDs and so on. Let me just break and talk to Beauregard. Bo, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Golden. How are you doing, sir?
What I'm Big Shot. How you doing?
The year and I enjoy the first day of the spring season.
Is it first day of spring?
Yeah, first day of spring.
That's good. What's it like up there?
It's about 48 degrees today, in the high 40s,
well,
close
good.
to the low 50s. So, yeah, very good, very much so.
I myself could take a chance with that.
Yeah, man, a good weather that. Good weather.
How is the diaspora? Everybody good?
Yes, everybody's here enjoying themselves and just, and also watching what's going on in Jamaica. Of course, it's March Madness, as I told you last week. And also some Trump madness taking place because we're here.
Well, I'm watching to see what happened in New York this week.
In terms of?
Well, Trump said that he expects to be arrested.
Okay, yes.
And so, he has called on the people to come out on the street, no?
Yes, they're calling for people to come out and protest. So we'll see how that goes. So his support is still there.
I know, but if they have so much notice this time,
Yes.
I would assume that the law enforcement people would be well prepared, no? You
Well,
can't
of course,
stop people
yes.
from demonstrating, but then they must stay within
Yes.
the law.
Yes, they are supposed to, and we don't want a repeat of
No.
the same thing that he's being arrested for, and well, all of that ties in, for what happened on January 6th the last time.
Well, I hope the
know.
number of persons that have been sentenced to prison terms will have some kind of salutary effect on those who may be thinking of doing all kind of crazy things. I hope so.
Yes, hopefully it's a peaceful protest if anybody does come out to protest, and we'll see how this process works out.
Yeah. All right, Bo, we stay in touch.
All right, Mr. Golding.
So I was talking about, but what university landscape was like when in my time, more than 50 years ago. I went to UWI in 1966 and I left in 1969. So that's more than 50 years ago. But today we have 7 universities, and we have close to 30,000 students who are enrolled in undergraduate programs. Now, each year, about 6,000 of them graduate. And by any standard, that is progress. In my time, it was only about 400. Nowadays, we are graduating about 6,000. And that is progress that we need if our country is to develop, if it is to be able to provide a better quality of life for all of us. Now, when I left university, you didn't need a university degree to get a reasonably good job. If you had 6 O-levels or a senior Cambridge certificate, as it used to be called in my time, that was sufficient to get you a job in a bank or with a manufacturing company or in an accounting firm. Those days are long gone. Today, if you don't have a university degree, it's not easy to find a job on which you can build a secure and rewarding career. It is even more so now in what they call the digital age, when economic activity is so much driven by technology and where the jobs that are being created require critical thinking, dexterity, and problem-solving skills. It's a different age altogether. But so often, we are told that Jamaica's development is being held back by the lack of skills, especially in the fields of science and technology. And you only need to look on the Sunday papers, look at the number of job advertisements that appear there. Some of them running every week for several weeks. So how do we square that with the fact that we are producing 6,000 graduates each year with first degrees? Part of the problem that we must put on the table, and we must do so up front, is that although we are producing 6,000 graduates a year, we are losing many of them to migration. Many of them are taking their skills and the training that they have acquired to other countries that offer them better salaries and perhaps better scope for advancement. Some of these countries, like the United States and Canada, are short of skilled workers, and they're doing all sorts of things to entice graduates from countries like Jamaica to go and work there. I looked at some figures over the weekend. About 25,000 Jamaicans migrate each year. I'm talking about those who get a visa and them go up and spend a couple of months with them family and so on. I talk about people who leave and don't plan to come back in a hurry. They may plan to come back eventually, but they're gone there to get a job and to work. About 25,000 people migrate from Jamaica each year. And you only need to pass up by Ligini any morning, and you will see the long lines of people with their big brown envelopes waiting to be interviewed. Them go in if they get through. But the data, and I looked at this carefully, the data shows that of that 25,000 that migrate each year, about 3,500 of them are university graduates. That is a staggering figure. Because what it means is that we are turning out 6,000 university graduates a year. But each year, 3,500 university graduates are migrating. So although we're turning out 6,000 a year, we're only left with 2,500. Because the majority of them are migrating. And that is a big part of the problem of trying to match the skills that we are producing in our universities with the job requirements that we need to be filled in order to move the economy forward. And it is not a problem for which there is any easy fix. And you can't blame a young university graduate if he or she grabs the opportunity to go somewhere where they can earn 2 times, 3 times, maybe even 4 times what they could get here in Jamaica. Not when they're starting out in life, not when they have big student loan to pay back, not when they hope to start a family, raise some children. And raising children properly is not cheap. So you can't blame them if they say, look, I can't really build that kind of comfortable future on what I can get in Jamaica. So I have to go where I can get a reasonable remuneration in order to be able to build the foundation of a successful and financially secure life. And if the truth be told, money is not the only factor. Money is a big factor. A big, big factor. When I look at what a teacher earns in New York compared to even what we are now giving them with the increase, you can't blame them when they're not happy, But at the same time, they have to recognize that we are in a particular circumstance, so their situation is not much different from the policeman or the nurse. But that's not the only factor. There is a problem of crime and violence, which frightened the daylights out of some of them. And that encouraged them, even when some of them, even with the low pay, would be inclined to stay here. Some of them have a friend who was shot. They have a cousin whose house was broken into and them thief out everything. When they factor that in, even though they might have been inclined to stay and accept the lower salary, when they think of their own security and safety, some of them say, listen, boy, I better buy a ticket and go get a job if I can find one somewhere else. So that problem of crime and violence has to be fixed as well if our young university graduates are to be motivated to stay and work in Jamaica. But that is not even my focus today. There are other issues that we need to look at. Now, the University of the West Indies, I don't know if other universities do it, but the University of the West Indies conducts tracer studies of its graduates to track how they are managing after they have graduated with their degrees. The last tracer study that I looked at was very, very instructive. It showed that 11%, listen to me, 11% of UW graduates were still not able to find a job 18 months after graduation. It's not that they're going on to further studies. They're hunting, they're looking at a job and they can't find one, or certainly can't find one that they're prepared to accept. But it is even worse than that. More than a half of the graduates, these are people who leave with their degrees, more than a half of them who found jobs were employed in positions for which they didn't need to have that degree in the first place. In fact, 12%, listen to them numbers again, 12% of the graduates with degrees were employed as clerks, filing papers, checking receipts. That meant that they are working in jobs that are paying them far less than what a university degree should be able to earn them. You know, I came across a cashier at a gas station who had a first degree from a university here. And when I asked him, I said, "What are you doing here?" He said he was at home for a long time trying to find a job and couldn't find one, and he heard that the gas station needed a cashier. So he went and him applied and him got the job because him say it's better. It's better at least I earn a little something rather than sit at home doing nothing. And this brings me to the issue on which I want to focus today. When students apply to go to university, they have to make a choice as to what it is that they are going to study, what skills they want to acquire. Sometimes the choice is restricted. Sometimes they may want to study a particular course, but the faculty that is offering that course may be filled. They have more applications than what space they have. So they can't get in. And they tell them, well, you have to wait till the next year. You wait a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. And you still can't get in because you're on a waiting list. So a lot of them say, well, I can't afford to sit down for 2-3 years and not do anything. So if I can't get in to study what I want to study, let me see what else is there that I can get into. And some of them make choices that are not the choices they would prefer to have made, but it is what the circumstances require of them. But sometimes, it is not a question of whether space is available. Sometimes a young person, this is somebody who just left high school, no? Apply to go to university. And sometimes they look at the subject courses that are being offered. And they look at one and say, I like this one. They look at that, no, I don't like that one there. That one they look too tough. No, I think I can manage this one over here. So take off this one and take this one and take that one. Like when you go to a buffet dinner, you walk in with your plate. And you take a little rice and a little chicken and a little vegetable and a little pasta. And you put a whole heap of different something in your plate. That's how many of them select their courses. A little of this and a little of that. So, what happened to them? You end up with a degree that has trained you in a little of this and a little of that. You end up as a jack of all trades but master of none. And when you graduate and you have your degree and you go start looking for a job, it is hard to find a job anywhere where the job description is calling for somebody who is a jack of all trades but a master of none. Job descriptions want particular skills. I want you to be good in this particular area because that is what my factory or that is what my business requires in order to do well. So we face a problem. The question I want to pose is, are our young people, when they apply to a university, are they thinking carefully and strategically about what they intend to study? Are they looking to the future to see which area of study would make them the most marketable, which would equip them to be able to get a good job and build a good career? Are they studying the labor market, looking at the pages and pages of job advertisements that are appearing in the Sunday papers to see now what it is that people are advertising jobs for? Maybe that's where I need to pitch my tent. What are the skills that they need to acquire which would best enable them to get a good job, start a family, or look after the family that they have already, pay back them student loan, build financial security for themselves, build a career future for themselves. And what about the universities themselves? Are they offering guidance to the students as to what choices they should make? Or are they simply saying, well, so long as you want to study this particular course and you have the money, come. We will find space for you, because so long as you can pay the money, that is revenue that we want to earn. I mean, are the universities catering to the uninformed inclinations of students? Or are the universities sitting down with these applicants and saying to them, hold on, sure, if you really insist on studying this, you can go ahead. But our knowledge of the economy, our knowledge of the labor market, the discussions that we have had with the people in the private sector and the government as to what jobs are likely to become available over the next 5 years, we are suggesting that you should consider studying this or studying that. Are the universities doing that? And what is the labor market doing? Are the functionaries in the labor market? The Jamaica Employers Federation, we're going to have David one on shortly. The PSOJ, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. These are the people who employ university graduates. One of the major sources of employment of university graduates. Are they engaging the universities to say to them, look, these are the types of graduates that we need. These are the skill sets for which we have vacancies and have problems filling them. And when we look at our trajectory over the next 10 years, we are going to be creating more and more jobs in these particular areas. And if the universities are not producing the graduates in these areas, then it is going to humbug our business. And when it humbug our business, it humbug the economy. Is that kind of conversation taking place? More than half of our university graduates are coming out with degrees in the humanities and social sciences. Now, I'm not knocking that, because the humanities and social sciences would include education, teachers. We need teachers. It would include demographers. We need demographers because we have to know what makes up the population when we're planning policies for them. We need persons who are comfortable in terms of helping to formulate policies, monitoring policies, and executing them. We need all of those. But our agricultural sector, for example, which for a country of wood and water, where we don't have no winter, we can grow crops at times of the year when so many developed countries and rich markets can't grow anything because of the cold and because of the frost. And yet we are lagging way behind. We import 10 times more food in Jamaica than we produce here. Go into any supermarket. Go into even some of the ground markets. Much of the onions you see, the garlic, you see them little white net bag that the garlic them come in. You think in Jamaica we grow them garlic there? Them garlic coming from abroad. You see the red peas them? Plenty of the red peas that we buy in the supermarket come from abroad. The Irish potatoes, sometimes even the cabbage and the carrot are imported. But of the 6,000 university graduates that we produce each year, less than 1/5 of 1%, listen to me numbers, less than 1/5 of 1% have degrees in agriculture. So our agricultural sector, which could be a major driver of the economy, like it is in New Zealand, has to depend on the little small farmer with his fork and his hoe and his cutlass, and perhaps still riding him like a faithful donkey to the field. It is he that we have to depend on to put what food he can produce in our markets and supermarkets. We must be able to do better than that. But we need the skills to make that happen, and we need to be able to convince our students that the choices they make can make a huge difference, not only to their own financial future and security, but to the financial future and security of the country. That is where we're going today. How to align study choices with the requirements of the labor market. Take a break. When we come back, we're going to have our first guest. Welcome back at Jamaica Live, Bridge 99. Today we're talking about how can we align, how can we synchronize the training of our university students with the job requirements of our market. How can we match them up better? And we're going to pursue that discussion. First of all, with Mr. David Wan, who is president of the Jamaica Employers Federation. And we're trying to get as well Dr. Donovan Stanbury, who is the campus registrar at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. And we're going to try and link up both of them. But we're going to start with David Wan. David, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, sir. Good morning to your listeners.
Tell me, the private sector is a major source of employment of university first-degree people. To what extent are our universities meeting the demands of the private sector? To what extent can they do better? To what extent is there some kind of interaction going on between the private sector and the universities, so that the universities is not spending a lot of time training people, and when they train the people, what they've trained them in is not exactly what the private sector needs? How is that going?
Oh, boy, there's a lot to unpack there, Mr. Bowlby. But let me say, there's a lot more that needs to be done. There is some dialogue going on between the universities and industry, but it's not enough. One of the big problems I think we need to shift to in this country is that we need to shift the emphasis that says every student leaving high school must go to university. I think there's too much emphasis on that, because some of them who are very bright will go to medicine, law, engineering. There's no changing that. But there are some others who a university education may not be the best choice for them. We need to shift the focus for some of them to say a vocational education or technical education is more suitable for me, because there's a stigma against that kind of education as if it is a secondary kind of career. But I think we need to emphasize that more, because we have so many hotels, for example, that have each room has an air conditioner to fix. Each hotel has a pool. All kinds of stuff. We need construction going on with the BPOs. We need electrical technicians. We need all kinds of technical and vocational education.
What I gather you to be saying is that even if none of the 6,000 graduates each year, even if none of them were to migrate, maybe wouldn't be able to absorb them, because it's not the right mix.
I would bet on that. Would not be able to absorb them. And at the same time, we're having labor shortages. And, a few years ago, we were having high unemployment. So there's a lot to be done. For example, Mr. Goldberg, LMIS, Labor Market Information System, that's on the Ministry of Labor's website. If you go onto that system, you can see what is the most frequent work permit issued last year, what are the best jobs advertised, ranked from number 1 to down to 10, which means that there are open positions that can't fill easily. And if a lot of students would just go to that website, they could see a lot of insight that can help them to make career choices. But I don't get the impression a lot of them are doing that. So that.
But before we even put the blame on them, and they have to bear some of the blame, but before that, does there exist anywhere, David, data that says that this country right now is short of so many refrigeration engineers or refrigeration technicians, that we are short of so many millwrights, that we are short of so many steel fixers? Does the Ministry of Labour have that sort of data that could guide our training activities?
Not directly, but there's a proxy for that, what you mentioned, sir. The proxy is they give a publication from the Ministry of Labour that says, here are the most frequently issued work permits over the last period. And you can look at those the issuance of work permits to understand where are the gaps in our skills here in Jamaica. You'll see chefs, you'll see electrical engineers, etc., and that will tell you.
But that has limited value, and I say limited value because let us say that you have one of your members who needs a maintenance mechanic. I'm not sure that he's going to go try get a work permit to import a maintenance mechanic. He probably has to just wait until one of the few that are available can give him an appointment 3 weeks' time.
Or he raises the price and see who comes out of,
yes.
the crowd. And also, what's happening in that scenario that you paint is that they are taking on engineers who may not be fully certified, have some experience, and then, they're using that labor pool instead of getting fully certified people in some cases.
I wonder, though, can we bring Dr. Stanbury in? Not yet? I wonder if part of the problem that we're experiencing, Donovan, is not a cultural, David, is not a cultural one. When I was growing up, there was a view, that anything that causes your hands to get dirty, that is second-class jobs. Everybody wants to put on a white shirt and tie.
I think that's still
does that still prevail?
I think it still does, based on the fact that we are orienting all of our school children to say you must go to university to study X if it's even a sociology degree, and that is the be-all and the end-all. And I maintain for some of us that's the right move, but not for all of us. And I think we need to start to make that shift in order to fill some of the gaps that we have out there. It's cultural, very much cultural.
But are we as a country, though? All right, let us step aside from the universities. What's the next bit in terms of the training and providing the skills that you and your members would need? What are we talking about? The vocational training institutes?
Yes, the Heart Trust.
But isn't there a big gap between the universities and the Heart Trust?
Well, it's a gap, but I don't understand what you mean.
In terms of levels of skill acquisition. In other words, if I get a Heart graduate, can I throw him to go pull down one of my machines right away? Does he have that quality training?
My understanding is that they would probably need a brief period of apprenticeship, but they are well equipped with the basics to undertake that with a brief period of onboarding. Mm-hmm. That's my understanding, yes.
So where are the graduates from our Heart Institutes going, our Heart Trust Institute? Are they in the migration camp as well?
Some of them do, but also we need to remember that a lot of these persons that go to Heart to get certification may already be in a job and trying to upgrade themselves.
Yes.
So they would stay on to the same employer and not really come into the workforce, available to everybody else.
Yes.
A portion of them. And some of them, yes, migrate, and some of them do it also, for personal satisfaction in some cases. But the point is, we're not putting out enough for them.
Yeah, and we're running ads in the newspapers week after week for some of these same technically trained people, and the mere fact that the same advertisement keep appearing so many weeks in succession means that they're not getting the applicants that they need.
Absolutely. And I tell you, there's another issue too, Mr. Bowden, which, just became apparent to me. I looked at some of the population data all around Jamaica, and in the group that is unattached, outside the labor force, I could see where all the pockets are in the communities. So, for example, Hayes Clarendon has 5,000 odd persons that are outside the labor force. Now, it is somewhat logistically tough for a Heart Trust to say, listen, we're going to go down to Hayes Clarendon, set up a mobile thing if we don't have an office there already, and try to attract some of these 5,000 persons to be trained and become available for the labor force. So there's a logistical issue because in a lot of the cases, these people are in somewhat remote territories, and even if they become trained, it may not be worth their while to travel to Kingston to get this job, if Kingston is the job. So there are some logistical issues with this too. even if you get them trained. So those are some of the issues.
But a lot of those people who are detached, part of it is another cultural quirk that we have.
Oh yes.
And that is, creative industries is a big potential for this country. But,
I think it is.
Too many people believe that, cutting a tune and hoping that you get the right producer to make you into a busy signal tomorrow is the way for everybody to go, and a country can absorb only so many busy signals. Huh?
That's right. But see, just back to this outside the labor force group. Not every one of them is willing to come back in the labor force, but I believe there's a good portion of them willing, if they can retrofit them, come back into the labor force and alleviate some of the shortages.
But there must be people with ambition, man. I mean, not all of them are involved in crime and so on. There must be people with ambition. There must be people who would want to earn a paycheck every week and so on. Is it that we're not doing the right things to identify them and to entice them?
I think we need to do more and identify who they are, where they are, and what is the gap we need to fill with these people.
I'm wondering whether or not the Prime Minister's announcement about removing fees for certain categories of study at the vocational institute, I wonder if that will have any impact on them.
That is a first step, but I still maintain that the logistics of the man who is in rural St. Elizabeth is still going to be challenging for him to get to that training facility on a regular basis to get himself certified. So we have several issues to deal with here.
To what extent is the lack of skills holding back the producers in the economy? Is it a major, or they find ways around it?
Up until now, they've been finding ways, but that's not the right way to go, because we need to be able to have people become certified so that you can have a more consistent and productive labor force, high quality, less prone to accidents. I was surprised to see only 50% of the high school cohort that takes the CXC gets 3 or more CXC. So
those outcomes are bad.
Yeah, the other 50% are by definition will be drifting towards informality and God forbid crime, so forth and so on. No employer going to want to take them off. So we need to move that bar to 75% over the next 2-3 years, in my view, because the call centers won't talk to you if you have less than 3 CXE. Some of them even on 5 CXE.
Yes.
So this is another source of the issue that we're talking about, the shortage of labor to our industry. So it's going to take more than just reducing the hard trust fee. It's a good step, a very good step. But it needs more.
Is there any dialogue taking place now, David, involving the Federation and the Ministry of Labour and other key players in the education sector?
We have regular meetings with the Ministry of Labour.
But in terms of a specific focus on this alignment that I'm talking about?
We don't do enough of that. We talk about other more front and center matters. These tend to be more medium-term issues, but we don't talk enough about it. And the first one.
Well, I think we need to take a different approach, because whether we're talking about university training or we're talking about technical education, it takes you 2 or 3 years to produce somebody with the skill set that the potential employers need, no? So if you know you're going to need these particular skills, the people who are imparting those skills need to get busy quickly. And we need to know what is the output target that we have to meet for 2027 and 2028 and 2029.
But also those planners need to be able to understand what is coming that is different than we have right now.
Yes.
And I keep mentioning the thing about clean energy, electric vehicles. I think it's the way of the future. Are we training enough people to service these vehicles when they become abundant in our roads?
What you're talking about is the kind of coordination that needs to be put in place.
Yes, there needs to be planning, not just saying today we need 100 and we're going to need 100 next year. We need to understand what changes are coming in the new economy.
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done.
There's been a lot of talk recently about the shortage of labor. You want to talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah.
When they're talking about shortage of labor, I mean, I can understand that you need a particular skill and you can't find it. But is it a big problem? Is it a big number problem?
I think it is confined to certain areas. I think the entry-level jobs, as well as jobs in the hospitality industry, have been affected. And I think the reason that we have looked at, and I think it is generally true, is that the construction industry and the BPO industry has been taking away people who might otherwise be available to the general workplace because they pay a little more than the working in a KFC, for example. So those are two factors that are affecting this labor shortage you're hearing about. I think it's primarily at the lower level, entry-level occupations, and it's in places like the tourism industry, which relies a lot on manpower. So the ratio of people working in a hotel to the number of visitors is very high, whereas in manufacturing it may not be so high.
I keep asking you this question because it's still bothering me. Has anybody quantified? Has anybody put numbers to these things? Because how you start planning if you don't have numbers? What are the jobs for which, what are the skills for which jobs can be filled? What are we doing about filling them? Who do we have in the pipeline who are already being trained? When will they be available? Who is doing that?
I'm not aware of any central database with that information, Mr. Bowles. I'm not aware of it.
I went on the Ministry of Labour website, because they have a job bank or something like that site. But to be honest with you, I don't know if it's down for maintenance or what, but I didn't find it particularly helpful. Certainly not in terms of preparing for this program today.
But you mean the site where you're looking for people who are available versus...
Yeah. Maybe I was expecting more from it than it was designed to provide. But I was searching to see if I can find anywhere that would tell me that, look, these are the positions for which jobs cannot be filled. So that I would then look to see, what do we have in the training institutions focusing on these particular skill sets, and when will those trainees complete their training and become available? When do I turn a corner in terms of meeting that demand? How responsive are our training programs to the realities in the labor market, so that, if we're terribly short this year, next year we may be short, but not so short, and in 3 years' time we should have reached some equilibrium in terms of the supply and demand for those skills.
Well, we're not there, because if you go on the website, you will see, for example, that there's a shortage of mechanical engineers, but there's no quantification of those. And various other occupations. You can tell that there's some shortage, but you don't know the quantum.
Well, you know what? I remember years ago there was a serious shortage of doctors in the public sector. Serious shortage. And we ramped up the program and we started training doctors like crazy. And then a couple of years ago, we are graduating doctors who can't find a job in the public sector. Many of them have to go set up their own little offices because every post for a doctor in the public sector was filled.
Yes.
And perhaps we didn't plan it properly. So, it's no point in saying, well, we're short of technicians in a particular area, so we need to start training. Next thing now, we're training more than we need. The thing has to be data-driven.
Yes, absolutely. Has to be data-driven. Now, we're not there yet. There is some information on the Ministry of Labour, not the section that you went to. There's another section. It is not where it should be in terms of how many are in the pipeline, how many are with training, how many will we need in 2-3 years. No, it's not.
And then we have not even discussed, David, in this conversation, we have not even discussed the question of productivity, which has been heading south for, 40 odd years, 50 odd years. I think with a little brick now and again.
Yeah, but you know, to me, it's not just the people is almost incidental to the point of are we encouraging business to retool their factories so that they can increase their productivity.
Well, what kind of encouragement they need? If it makes sense, if it is profitable, why they don't do it?
Well, you know, I think there's quite a few reasons why there's lesser competition in Jamaica, so you're not forced by your competition to become, you know, to think about, let's take the banking industry, let's take up anything. You have,
We're having a problem with your line, David. I'm getting a terrible distortion.
Uh-oh. I can't hear you clearly. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Try a little longer, let's see.
Yeah. There is more competition. The competition is more intense in the first world market.
Uh-huh.
Every participant in the marketplace has to, you know, technology, latest customer service techniques, and invest money in keeping yourself, you know, fit so you can keep doing business. The impetus is less here because we have, you know, a smaller market and smaller.
Oh no, this is bad.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Can hear you?
I'm getting a terrible distortion, which is interrupting what you're saying. I know you're talking, but I'm missing a good portion of it.
You want me to hold or hang on for?
Just hold and let me get some advice as to what we do. No, we're having a problem, and we're coming up close to the break. So, David, let me thank you very much. There's still much more for us to talk about. I'm going to call you back because this issue, we're not going to exhaust it today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We do this every Monday, and the focus today is on this question of what appears to be a misalignment, call it mismatch if you will, between what we are producing out of our universities, the skill sets, the disciplines, and what the labor market in Jamaica requires in terms of job offerings, openings, the skills that they need in order to drive business and industry and drive the economy. We just had on Mr. David Wan, who is president of the Jamaica Employers Federation, made some very interesting points, and I want to follow up with them. And I'm hoping to do so with Mr. Chen, who is my next guest. Chen is the president of the Caribbean Employers Confederation, I think it is called. Do we have him online? Wayne, are you there?
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Very well, all things considered.
I want you to help me. I don't know if you heard the discussion I had with David Wan, but he raised a very interesting point, you know, and it's something I want to explore with you. What he seemed to be suggesting, and I'm using my words carefully because I don't want to misrepresent what he said, but what he seemed to be suggesting is that we're putting too much focus on this university degree, which is not only not meeting the needs of the labor market, but is perpetuating the stigma that if you don't have a university degree, somehow you haven't quite made it. And if I were to take his thought and carry it in my own direction, what he may be saying is that instead of producing 6,000 first degree graduates each year, maybe we should be producing 4,000 and using those resources to produce maybe another 3,000 or 4,000 people with technical skills. Anything wrong with that?
I wouldn't put a numerical target on it in that sense, but to say that we have been in this discussion for a very, very long time about what the educational system ought to be putting out. And the fact is that I don't think we have gotten enough of the plantation out of the system. I mean, the system served a particular purpose back in the pre-independence days when we had were heavily invested in sugarcane and similar crops. When you didn't need a huge cadre of skilled workers, you needed a big pool of unskilled workers with almost a built-in unemployment to keep the cost of labor down. We have had 60 years of independence, and we should have transformed our education system sufficiently to meet the requirements of a new economy. In fact, an economy that has to adapt to a fast-evolving world. We are now talking about a fourth industrial revolution, but I soon come back to that. The fact is that more and more, David is onto something, David One is onto something. More and more degrees become less important in terms of letters behind the name. Certification remains important. In fact, it's of the utmost important. And the fact that the majority of the Jamaican workforce have no certification, is a cause for alarm. But more and more the market is demanding baskets of skills. There's a little secret I should share with your audience. Employers tend to hire for attitude and train after that. So if you are you're positive, result-oriented, driven, diligent, that is raw material to work with. The education system thus needs to focus around fundamental skills, literacy, numeracy, critical thinking, and so on. But also the soft skills, positive sense of self, diligence and attitude of lifelong learning, that sort of thing. And the employers can work with that because the specialized skills that employers need, they tend to train for. But what you want is the raw material that is trainable, people who are trainable. And that is where our educational system has really failed. What makes it more challenging, as I say, is that we have a huge challenge, but we also have a huge opportunity because our global services sector, the business process outsourcing, has demonstrated that geography becomes less important in terms of jobs. In other words, if you have a good internet connection and you have the requisite skills, you can stay right here in Jamaica and earn in euros, dollars, whatever. Without leaving Jamaica, you can earn hard currency by selling a skill online to the global market. But these are the things that we have to take into account now when we are talking about the transformation of education. Coming back to the basics, making sure that you get past a good foundation at early childhood, inculcating the discipline and the soft skills necessary to continue learning and adding on to your knowledge, and creating a basket of skills that are marketable. And that is where we ought to be pushing education.
You had mentioned, when we were setting up this discussion, you had mentioned that the Orlando Patterson report had recognized this disjuncture between our tertiary output and our labor market requirements.
Yes.
How did his group suggest that we deal with it?
I look back at it a few minutes ago. I'll mention that, and since we spoke, you may have seen Donovan Bottom's article in yesterday's paper, in yesterday's Gleaner.
Yeah, I saw it.
Important questions raised. Orlando Patterson's report, I don't want to misquote it. It spoke to a re-emphasis in the tertiary in terms of a realignment or an alignment with workplace demands, which had so far been missing. I can't seem to locate my author. Sorry. It was down in page 50 of the report, if I recall correctly.
Well, until you find that.
Yes.
Something you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to explore it some more. I didn't raise it with David One. How much responsibility does the employer have for training? I remember when I was in office, I can't remember his name, but there was an overseas investor who was here and met with me, and we were discussing this matter. And he made the very same point that you made, He says, look, I prefer train my own workers. I just want people that are trainable.
And that's it. That has been my experience as an employee over the years. I mean, a lot of people have passed through my business, and we've invested tremendously in training, including bringing in overseas trainers for long periods, for years, to lift up the standards. But Orlando Patterson's report touches on strategic oversight of the sector. They talk to the labor market challenges, and I quote, Jamaican students have long lamented the challenges related to job seeking during and after the completion of tertiary studies. Their prescriptions come down to changes in the Act, enhance the ability to talking about quality assurance and quality assurance around outcomes, actual jobs found by the bearers of the certification coming out of the tertiary institutions as a condition of funding.
Yes.
So I would say his recommendations don't get down to the nuts and bolts of what ought to be taught so much as responsiveness to the market ought to be one of the criteria for continued funding.
Well, I don't know. I quoted some numbers, you see, earlier. I don't know if you heard them.
Yeah.
From the last UWI tracer study that I saw, and I believe the last one that was done, I've been able to find any subsequently, where they said 11% of the graduates after 18 months after graduation were still looking for a job and couldn't find one. And 50% of those who found jobs were working in jobs that were far below what their university training equipped them to do. Some of them were working as clerks.
Well, it's a dilemma that's not unique to Jamaica. Jamaica might have it heightened in that we're doing two things. We are training some that can't find work, and we're training the ones that are desirable for export, because Jamaican workers, whether nurses, doctors, teachers, and so on, of high quality,
in demand,
are quickly recruited and gone.
Yes.
So they are, in a way, the market is functioning because we're losing 80% of our graduates anyway, and they go off to find work overseas. But I'm coming to the specifics now of the Patterson report. They talk of something called a tertiary education management information system, and this is something to include enrollment and dropout data, tracer studies after graduation, and so on, to really trace what happens. But coming back to something I mentioned earlier about a basket of skills, it talks to developing a framework for micro-credentialing. I have to get the terminology right. Aligned with the National Qualifications Framework, the NQF.
Spell that out for me.
The micro, M-I-C-R-O, hyphen credentialing. I like it. But you immediately...
You have to spell it out, I mean, explain what it means.
It means rather than pursuing like one overarching thing, you have skills that are you make the thing more modular, more granular, and you have specific skills in specific areas. So if you're going to, one of the things I discovered on my trip to Canada a few months ago to look at our farm workers overseas is that what we conceived of as a farm worker 20 or 30 years ago versus now is a much more technically savvy human, Because when you work on a modern farm now and you're going to be paid in hard currency, you don't just want to pluck an apple off a tree. There are workers now who know which buds to prune off a 2-year-old sapling to ensure that the tree is highly productive. And that is something that is done, but no machine can do that yet. But not only that, the person who is doing this kind of technical work in the orchard is also somebody who can drive a piece of equipment, maintain that equipment, monitor readouts on a screen, that sort of thing now. So there's no one course that is going to teach you all of those skills. So if we are going to bring innovation into agriculture in Jamaica, it struck me then that case or UWI St. Augustine at the Faculty of Agriculture is going to have to break down some. A farmer nowadays is going to have to be an expert in a whole wide range of fields if he's going to be a successful farmer. I use this as an example to show that innovation is not just in the high-tech industry, but it's also bringing new ways of doing things to traditional industries. It may come as a surprise to Jamaica to know that the Netherlands, which is a small, relatively small country, very high-income country, is the world's second largest exporter of food.
Yes, yes.
So, but a farm in the Netherlands is a very high-technology operation. Typically a massive greenhouse under very controlled conditions with monitoring water, sunlight, the nutrients that are fed into the plants, and so on and so forth.
Seems to me, though, in terms of our planning infrastructure, it seems to me that there's something that is missing. I normally spend the time before I come on the program on a Monday just to try and see if I can get my hands on any material that I think would be helpful and would be instructive so that I don't come on the air and talk foolishness. And I had difficulty in trying to see if I could find anywhere where all of these things are sort of, brought together on one radar to say, well, this is what needs to be done. This is the kind of multitasking that our workers must be capable of. This is what the universities are doing. The impression I have, Wayne, is that all of these things are being looked at somewhere, but they're being looked at in separate silos.
That has been one of our big challenges as governments. And you would have heard the term many times over the years. The need for a joined-up government where agencies and ministries really work together around a common theme. This year, for the first time, I see a lot of emphasis on it in national security, just to use an example. But education is so critical. I remember telling a former Minister of Labour that the Ministry of Labour needs to merge up with the Ministry of Education and be called the Ministry of Human Resource Development. I said it kind of jokingly. But that's the sort of approach we need to really have now, a sort of all-in approach around developing our human capital. And the human capital now is going to, as I say, with the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, is going to be very knowledge-driven. Mm-hmm. A Jamaican farm in the future, as I say, we have to retrofit our people. Some of them are getting there. There are always Jamaicans who are very high value, That is why we can't keep a math teacher in the country, which is why we can't keep science teachers in the country. Because as soon as they get good, they are gone. But we have to expand and deepen the training. So a young farmer in Manchester who has a greenhouse now has to be taught how to read all the monitors that will monitor, as I say, the scarce water that goes on, the nutrients that go in, the sunlight, the size to know the ideal time to plot the crop out. And I use greenhouses specifically because the climatic conditions we have not much control over, but at least here we have an opportunity now to control the conditions.
But even those that are not in greenhouses, they need to know exactly what are the properties of the soil that they're planting in.
Absolutely.
What are its deficiencies and how can those be corrected, no?
Yes. And the market eventually sorts out the education product, there are several reasons why the women outnumber the men in the tertiary institutions in Jamaica. But one of the reasons is that a lot of the young men say that I could have a university degree and earn X, but I can go and run a taxi or open a stall and earn more than X.
Yes.
After fewer years of investment.
Wayne, can you hold for me? Let's take a quick break. I'm coming right back to you.
Yes.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We're talking today about the relationship between our training programs, so particularly our university training program, the kind of graduates that we are producing and what the labor market requires. And we have online Mr. Wayne Chen, President of the Caribbean Employers Confederation. Well, a particular thing I want to raise with you, because I still have a kind of comfort level problem with, and you mentioned the word before, attitude. I had mentioned the word before, culture. But I remember one member of parliament in a city constituency remarking to me once that after much lobbying, he had secured the establishment of a Heart Trust training center in his constituency. And the difficulty he had in getting students to enroll. Now, do you have a sense as to how these training institutes are doing? Are they overcrowded? Or are you looking at situations where you may have more teachers than students?
It's a mixed bag. One thing I will say, I know it might be controversial, but I will say to the fear of contradiction, is that we could do a lot more with the resources that Heart has at its disposal. I looked in the Prime Minister's presentation, I read it, and there is quite a bit more this year than that there have been in previous years in terms of an emphasis around where Heart ought to go. But I refer back to the Patterson Commission findings, and I'll read a little piece. The tertiary sector, especially community colleges and some universities, should partner more effectively with private sector entities to provide on-the-job training and learning hubs in the organization. And my memory goes back a few years. We had a conference in Jamaica, and I met the head of it. It was an apprenticeship conference, and I met people from Australia and Germany, which are really at the forefront of apprenticeship programs. And a lot of people don't realize that these are two of the most prosperous countries in the world with two of the most advanced economies. And much of the economic success is based around the quality of the apprenticeship programs that many of the highly skilled workers go into, starting in high school and continuing at the tertiary level. The integration of tertiary education into business is very advanced in those countries. I'm also reminded there's a university I'm fairly familiar with up in Massachusetts. That's Northeastern University. And I'm familiar with it because back in the 70s, some of my high school friends went there. And I've seen a university which was, I wouldn't say relatively easy to get into, but about average in terms of its acceptance rate. But over the last 40-odd years, has become one of the most difficult universities to get into because it is so highly sought after. I mean, the acceptance rates at Northeastern now is only slightly higher than Harvard or Yale. And the reason is that Northeastern, over the decades, integrated its offerings into the businesses in the Boston area. So it took on a look of being less academic than its more storied neighbors, and became known as a university that you were virtually guaranteed a job when you graduated because you would have been working in some industry as a part of your course of study. And the Northeastern model is becoming more and more studied in the U.S. because of the high, firstly, the high income and the guaranteed jobs that your graduates get. And they're not unique in that. The University at Buffalo up in upstate New York, which is, Buffalo is one of the centers in the world of renewable energy. And many of their engineering students at the University of Buffalo work in the renewable sector. And all the graduates find work as they come out. And we know this in Jamaica, we know that you have to integrate the universities and colleges, you have to, including the teachers' colleges, the private sector, and the Heart Trust, which is paid for by the employers of this country.
But why can't it work here? Or why isn't it working? I pose that question because I remember that my fifth form class at St. George's, a number of students there, I can remember Richard Derring, of blessed memory, Chris Derring's elder brother, was one. Bob Lightman at that time had a program where he would recruit fifth form graduates, send them to England, where they work as an apprentice in a company, acquired skills that the program was either 2 years or 3 years, and then came back here because remember that was the time when we were pushing manufacturing by industrialization by invitation.
Yes.
And they came back here, and these were the guys who were running the factories.
Yes.
So, but nothing like that is happening today. Why? Why is the private sector not being engaged? Is it that they are stubborn, or is it that they're not being approached? They're not being sort of...
It depends. It depends on how you view the private sector. Because within the BPO sector, a lot of people are being trained. I mean, the BPO sector before the pandemic was just shy of 40,000 workers. But the last time I saw figures, it's over 60,000 workers. And it's not just call centers anymore. Many of them are doing very highly skilled service jobs. The challenge we have is, just as we have added on tens of thousands of jobs in a relatively short period of time, we can also lose tens of thousands of jobs as companies shift to artificial intelligence, which may do the job quicker and more cheaply. So we get a little window of opportunity, and we need to ramp up the skills. But I had touched on Donald Bottom's article in yesterday's Gleaner for this very point, because he makes the point that manufacturing, because of the fall of manufacturing in Jamaica from 20% of GDP to 10% over the last 30 years, what we have seen, and it's not unique to Jamaica, is a deindustrializing of the country and a deindustrializing of many of the skills. The manufacturing, the import substitution model that they pursued in the 50s and 60s, of course it had to evolve into something else. But what we did, we did that, which was really a subsidy for a while, understanding that you're building up your knowledge base, your skill base, your culture of research and development and innovation. But we lost it when we exported the people. To rebuild it, I don't know if Don's prescriptions are practical in the current dispensation, but there's no doubt in my mind that the integration of our tertiary institutions with the private sector, and the private sector, not just the manufacturers. Yes, of course, you have the Grace Kennedys of the world and the True Uses and so that are producing, are in the agribusiness and producing products for export. But also in the services sector, in the business process outsourcing that identifies skills in demand across the globe but are just an internet click away, and so on and so forth. In the hospitality sector, but let us not forget, I think you would have traveled in the Caribbean, and it's always a pleasant surprise to me that when you're in a hotel in another part of the Caribbean and you come across staff that are particularly good and realize that they are Jamaican. I mean, Jamaican hotels, they will tell you that if they expand in the region, they take Jamaicans with them because we are the best hospitality workers.
I found that too. Most recently
best hospitality workers.
Most recently in Antigua.
Yeah, especially, yes, of course. But not, especially in Antigua, but not limited to Antigua.
Yeah.
And they didn't get there without training. These are people who are trained and highly skilled in what they do. And it's not just in service jobs, it's in management jobs, if you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Because hospitality management is a very specialized area. The fact, though, is that this is where the hard trust, the tertiary institutions and enterprise have really come together to ensure that these skills are not only being imparted in a classroom, but there is a concept in learning that always is in front and foremost in my mind, and it's called learning by doing. It is so much more effective that when you come out of the classroom, you can walk right into our workspace and apply what you have learned, you heard the day before from a teacher in front of whether a screen or a blackboard. And this is where I think, coming back to my earlier lament around joined-up government, this is where we need joined-up education.
Yes.
We have the funding with heart, which was set up for this specific purpose. We have the tertiary institutions, which have the history, the talent, maybe need the orientation. And you have the employers who are looking for skilled workers and looking for an opportunity to train more. But the training requires a huge investment in people who may not even hang around. And if the country recognizes this need for the common good, I think this is impatient of debate we need to implement.
Seems to be that there's a table somewhere where we need to bring together a whole heap of people.
Yes, definitely.
And, because I don't think there's any one part of government or one part of the economy It's not just a Ministry of Education problem. It's not just a tertiary education institution problem. It's not just a private sector problem. All of them have to be in there.
Come back to join the government. But education is so fundamental. I mean, the point has been made several times that there's no country that is properly educated that remains poor. Not one.
Mr. Seaga used to repeat that so often.
I heard it many times from him. But it's an important point. It sounds simple but not easy to accomplish.
Yes. Wayne Chen, thanks a lot. I mean, I think you have added a lot of value to the discussion. We're going to continue it now with some students themselves who I want to hear what their perspective is. Thanks a whole lot, Wayne.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
All the best.
So thank you so much. You want us to take a break or you want us to carry on? Take a break. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live, Bridge 99. Today we'll be having a very intense discussion on how do I put it? How do we align? How do we synchronize? How do we integrate our education and training programs with what the economy requires, what the job market requires? There's no point in training people if when we train them they can't get a job. So how do we line that up? And of course, as has come up in the discussion, we're losing, Wayne Chen put it at 80%. I think 80% may be an overstatement. When I looked at the numbers, it looks like it's about 2/3, which is not far from 80%. 67% of our graduates are migrating. They're going to greener pastures where they can enjoy better opportunities, better remuneration, and so on. Someone once said, if and they were talking about nurses, if when you train 10 nurses, you lose 6, so you're only left with 4. Well, it only means that if you want 40 nurses, you have to train 600. So that when you lose your 6, you still retain the number that you have. Well, it's not as simple as that. I mean, it costs a lot of money to train people. And we want to see if we can find out what are the factors at play, what are the critical considerations. It wouldn't be right to have this discussion without getting the perspective of some students themselves, people at the universities. And we have 2 people joining us from our 2 largest universities, UW and UTECH. And we're hoping to be joined by Robyn Murray from the UW Guild and Omolora Wilson, I believe, from UTECH. Do we have them online? Robyn, are you there?
I'm here, but it's actually the other way around. So Omolora is actually from UE, and I'm
Robyn is from UTECH.
You have to forgive me, when you get to my age, you make all them kind of mistakes. Right? and if you take your time, you will get there too.
Oh dear.
Let me thank you for coming on the program. We've been talking today about what appears to be a mismatch between the kind of university graduates we're producing and the kind of job requirements of the labor market. Now, one of the things that triggered this, I will tell you, is when I looked at the last tracer studies that I saw for UWI graduates. It said that 11% of them couldn't find a job after 18 months. And 50% of those who found jobs were in jobs for which the degree that they studied so hard for was not particularly necessary or relevant. Now, as students who will shortly be graduating, do you have a concern that you are going to be entering a labor market that is not friendly to all of the effort that you have made to get a degree?
Well,
which are you want to go first?
Go ahead, Robyn.
Okay, no problem. So actually, that's a great question, and it's something that we need to consider when we are selecting our career path. Right? I recently graduated in November, and had I known that this is what the market looks like, I would have preferred to do a little bit more research. And I think it's a general it's a general concern by students. You know, what's going to happen when I graduate? Am I going to get a job in my field, or am I going to have to resort to working at a fast food restaurant or in a call center? And that's what we actually don't want to see happening. But I think all of that stems from the accessibility of data, or the type of data collected within each field. It would be really good to see some research specific to the industries to say, all right, this is the rate of employment, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. That would have been something really great to give to, future graduates so they're somewhat informed. But I think there is a general concern, definitely, of what the future will look like after graduation.
I'm getting a lot of background noise from one of those lines. I don't know which it is.
Is it me?
Robyn, are you there?
I'm
here.
All right, give me your perspective, Robyn, and in doing so, are the universities, in terms of the university administration, are they doing enough to provide guidance to students when they are selecting their courses, when they are applying for entry?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think it's on the university's management to do that. I think when you're selecting your course for, to apply to university, it's coming more from your prior institution, where you're coming from. Were you given enough career guidance to say that based on the subjects that you start or based on the grades that you receive, this is the best approach? I don't necessarily think it's completely on the university's management or their department that deals with recruitment.
But let me argue that with you, because I don't know that whether you call them career guidance people or whatever at the high schools. I don't know if they are sufficiently in touch with the labor market and with the labor market functionaries. I would pose the question: if my grandson, for example, is at the age where he wants to go to a university, why is there not an office somewhere, whether at UTECH or at UW or at both, where he could go and sit down and talk with an advisor? I say, now look, my interest is really this is what I'm studying at, or this is what I've studied at high school. I would like to pursue this, but I need some guidance from you. So that somebody could say, well, if you really want to pursue that, fine. But bear in mind that, finding a job in that area now is not going to be so easy.
To you with this question, when we're selecting our career path, that's how I like to look at it, especially at the grade 9 level when we're preparing for CSEC and moving on to CAPE. Normally the subjects we select, we have a general idea of a direction we want our careers to head in. That's why we select specific subjects. So that's why I say it's not necessarily 100% on them, but something more could be done within those institutions that prepare us to go to the tertiary institution to form some linkage, right? Form some linkage where they do more career days. I know that career days are actually a thing already, right? But they could be more structured to be intentional in giving students specific information about the wide careers that are there and the specific industries that exist and the issues within the industries, especially the employment rate.
Well, this is where I'm going, and this is the concern that I have, because some of those people who graduated from UW, some of that 11% that sat at home for 18 months and couldn't find a job, maybe if more information was available to them, maybe if more guidance was offered to them, maybe they would have made course choices that would not have put them in that predicament.
And I'm going to agree with you there, but I'm also going to say probably what the job market looked like 4 years ago when they were selecting these courses, it's not the same now.
Well, that is
because
true.
there's a factor of COVID that came in as well, which reduced quite a lot of job operations.
Well, the tracer study I'm talking about is before COVID.
Okay, well, let's look at this as well, yes? You had stated that there's no career advising at the different universities, but But I beg to differ because at the University of the West Indies, we do have academic advising for our students. And if it's a case in which you don't know what it is that you want to do, the university provides handbook that tells you the different job opportunities should you venture into a degree. So I agree with Robyn when I say the onus is not necessarily on the university to say to you that, oh, you won't make any money in this field because it is your degree and your interest that you wish to take on. What I would recommend is that the onus goes on the government to provide reports to society about the different job opportunities or the labor requirements in society at this moment. So if the government knows that, okay, then we need a little less more teachers and a lot more engineers, there should be some sort of report going out to say, this is where our labor market is, this is the requirement, and this is what we need from society overall, and not necessarily from the schools itself. Because if my teacher comes to me and say, Omolora, I think you should study engineering because the law is not going to work, if I have a passion for law, I'm going to do it nonetheless. But if the government provides feasible statistics to me about why that is not the best way to venture with the economy that we're in now, that's a different story. So where I'm at in the moment is not necessarily the university, because they do try to advise you, they tell you how to register, they try to guide you, explain what is this, what is that. But how do we, even if the university gives you advice about what is hot now and what isn't, what is required from the labor market, just opposed to what is not.
Let me ask both of you. Let me ask both of you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Are we putting too much pressure on our young people, particularly our high schoolers? Are we putting too much emphasis on this everlasting university degree?
Mm-hmm.
Is there too much cultural stigma still attached to it that, if you don't have a degree, boy, you're not cutting it? When employers are saying, well, what I need right now is not somebody with no degree. I need somebody who can pull down my boiler or work on my refrigeration equipment because I have to maintain my products at a certain temperature. That's what I need. Should we almost revolutionize the whole thinking so that not everybody believes that, you must have BSc or BA behind your name.
Right.
But if you have a skill that Grace Kennedy cannot do without because they need that particular technical skill, so that we upgrade the status and the prestige of our technical training facilities rather than putting the pressure on people. If you don't get degree, you not say nothing.
Well,
are we being unfair to our students?
Well, how I look at it, Mr. Golden, is that I believe, based on the conversation I've had as the president with our members from the...
Am I losing you? Hello? Don't tell me you had lost them.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you're still here. Thank God. I thought you had left me.
No, man. I think Omolora kind of dropped off for a bit.
Give me your perspective.
Okay, so first I want to say what Omolora touched on before. I concur with it 100%. That was regarding the previous question, right? But based on what you're saying now, I think the problem really is that a lot of persons, a lot of youths, they're so set on going into traditional job fields, right? They're so set on going into the traditional career path that they don't even think about, okay, I can look at being a welder. I can go and get this certification here, because the stigma exists still that if you don't have a degree and not say nothing. As much as we're somewhat moving away from it, a lot of persons look at you like, okay, if you never got a tertiary education, if you didn't graduate, you didn't get a degree, regardless of the class.
Well, I know that's what I want to explore, because I know in my time, when I was at your stage, it was a big thing. That, if you don't have a degree, you're not really, and what you seem to be saying to me is that stigma still exists.
Yes, it does. And a lot of what I realize a lot of youth are doing now, they're trying to get the degree and then they'll do different skills on the side, right? So I know a lot of persons that graduated and yet they're lash technicians, they're hairstylists, makeup artists, because they went to get those extra qualifications, because they look at those not as main hustles but as side hustles to get more income.
But I know those students who are lash technicians and nail techs that use that particular sort of funds to pay for the tertiary education.
Yes. Yes, but the point is still that they still want to get the degree because unfortunately the stigma is still there. That getting those associates from Heart, etc., it might not be enough, especially because everybody's still kind of somewhat going in the direction of traditional career goals or traditional career paths rather.
Do you know of any of your of your colleagues, of your contemporaries who have graduated with their degrees, worked hard, probably carrying a whole heap of student loan to pay for it, and are having problems finding a job?
Of course.
Or can't find the right kind of job?
Of course.
How prevalent a problem is that?
It's also from my circle, most of them did business, right? And I think that's where a lot of people have problems. I also see it with the engineers as well, that when they graduate, it's hard for them to find somewhere to start because the places are still looking for really qualified people to hire and not really somebody that they can prepare or train for the industry.
Be more specific. Too many employers want people with 5 years experience, but if you're not prepared to hire the youngsters when they graduate, how are they going to get the experience?
That's the same. Thank you.
It doesn't make any sense. And what I appreciate at the universities, I can speak for UTECH, what they try to do is allow students to leave with at least 1 year work experience because we are mandated to do some teaching practice or internship in order to graduate. But that's just 1 year, and I'm pretty sure employers aren't necessarily looking for somebody with just graduating and just 1 year of internship or experience. So that's also a problem.
You know, a former Minister of Education told me once that it was shocking to discover how many graduates from UCASE, College of Science and Agricultural Science and Education, how many of those graduates ended up driving taxis or opening grocery shops?
But I can give you one even worse. How many graduates from the University of the West Indies are now working at call centers?
Yes.
That's happening too. So at this point, where I am at is just one. The narrative of having tertiary education is important. It's important to have higher education, yes. But we can't just tell students, overall our young people, that go and get a higher education without explaining to them the requirements from the labor market should you get that higher education. I think that is one of the biggest issues we're having right now. A lot of persons who are graduating, but graduating with degrees that are not necessary right now for the labor market. That is our problem right now in Jamaica and the Caribbean on a whole.
In my time, they used to have... certainly at UWI, they used to have job fairs where employers would come up and indicate what sort of jobs are available and so on. They still have those things?
What they have at the University of West Indies, they don't have job fairs per se. What they do have is mock interviews based on the degree that you're studying. So if you're an engineering student and you want to have a mock interview, they get persons from different areas that ventures into engineering to come and interview the way
that's really intended to prepare you to make sure that you do well at the interview.
Exactly.
But that's not the person who is going to offer you the job.
No. Well, no, I don't want to say that because I've seen where students have been offered jobs from those interviews. So we actually get real employees and HR personnel coming in, employers and HR personnel coming in on campus to do the interview. Because when I did my mock interview, I got offered a job after because from the very same HR personnel that was doing the interview with me. But I want to take it a step further to say that the government ministry, rather, of education, youth, information, they're now trying to create a higher education policy that facilitates students who study at hard, students who study at community colleges to actually be able to elevate into getting our BSc and our BAs just the same without having to do just kids and things like that. So what I can commend the government for right now is that even if you're doing a skill that doesn't fall under the University of the West Indies or the University of Technology, CMU, etc., but you're at a Heart or a community college, that you still get the qualifications that is required of you to say, I have a BSc, a BA, a degree like that per se, and not just an associate, which kind of facilitates and feeds into the concept of the labor market right now.
Yes.
I left, sir.
Well, you know, one of the reasons, and we're going to wind up on this. One of the reasons why this discussion on this topic overwhelms me is, let me give you an anecdote. I graduated in 1969, right?
Right.
And after we took our last exam, even before the results came out, every major company in Jamaica set up a little booth inside the assembly hall. And we are graduates. We're not graduates yet, you know, we're still waiting on results. But we went from booth to booth, and instead of them interviewing us, we were interviewing them. And I remember there was a friend of mine and after we got through all the booths, we would end up at the soda fountain and, you know, having a hamburger and so on. And I remember a friend of mine said, well, I spoke with Colgate-Palmolive, and I spoke with Bride and Evelyn, and I spoke with Tea Geddes Grant. And based on what they were offering, I went back to Colgate-Palmolive and I said to them, look, I have good news for you. I have agreed to work for you. And it's almost as if the company was ready to celebrate. Not one of my graduating class had a problem in finding a job. But then, we weren't producing 6,000 graduates in those days. We were producing 400.
That's true.
Right? So it's a different ball game now. But I think so much more can be done and needs to be done.
Agreed.
To coordinate the whole thing so that when somebody's applying to go to university, if they want to study Turkish archaeology, because that is their passion, don't stand in their way. But at least they must have the information that, look, if you want a career, I remember, as one of you pointed out a while ago, it's no longer a career for life, but a lifetime of careers, plural. But if you want to build up an economic future for yourself, there are some things you need to take into consideration when you're choosing which course of study to pursue. I just want them to be armed with that information. I want them to get the advice. If they don't want to follow it, that is their choice. I can't force anybody. But I just want to make sure that people don't, 10 years after they leave your university, they are wringing their hands and saying, boy, if only I'd known. If only I had some information. If only I'd had some guidance, some advice, I would have made a different decision and my life trajectory would have been different.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I believe that as the minute we start doing that, and it's not just for the different schools, but the government itself must feed the population.
Absolutely.
And let them know that
Absolutely.
this is what we demand in order for us to grow. Because
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, whatever we're doing facilitates the government and the nation itself.
Yeah, you're right. But we also have to get we also have to get the private sector, because they're a major source of employment. They have to be at the table as well.
Right. So
And they must be able to say, no, we are
information.
projecting over the next 10, 15 years
Yes.
that this is where the economy is going to go. This is
And
where
this
the
is what we
technology is
need.
going to take us. And this is what we're going to need in order to make sure that we are on top of that game. So universities, bear that in mind. You know.
Yeah. The minute we start doing that, Mr. Golden, we will be one step closer to being a developed country instead of a developing country.
That's a good note to end
Definitely.
on. Good note to end on. Can I thank you all very much? Can I thank you both for joining me for this discussion. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having us.
Good.
Yeah. Take
That
care.
brings us to the end of the program. It's been another day, another subject, another focus, another discussion. I hope you found it useful. I hope my YouTube followers will continue giving us the feedback. It's very helpful, you know. And some of the suggestions that they make on the topics that we discuss, we find very useful. So if we return to it, we'll integrate some of those. Thank you so much. Hope to be back here next week, Monday, to do it all over again. Jamaica Live, Bridge 99.